Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Questioning a better way, one gracefully disruptive conversation at a time.
Welcome to Turmeric and Tequila. I'm so excited to be here today. We are coming to you live at Big Up Studios in Rhino, in Denver. And we have some local Denver royalty in the house. You know I'm pumped to always have our locals. We got Lil Fresh Sam. Lil Fresh Sam, welcome to the mic.
Man, thank you for having me.
Yes, full transparency, it's 7:30 on a Tuesday. And this Pharcyde human, I got to give a special shout out because if you listen to TNT, you know we've worked with, celebs and notables, and sometimes scheduling is hard. She has a flight out at 3 a.m. and she made time to come through. So I got to give you a personal thank you on that.
Absolutely.
The gratitude and everything and the graciousness shine through. And I can tell you've done big events because I'm guessing you've managed humans and it's a constant struggle.
It is. It's like putting out fires constantly.
Seriously. All right. Well, I want to jump to you. Fashion stylist, designer, creative director. You have worked with the likes of Iggy Azalea, Puma, the Pharcyde, like big old skull candy, name drops, big humans. But you're really passionate about working with the individual and inspiring people to kind of follow their heart and find their passion. But that's not easy, being an entrepreneur, and being an entrepreneur in the fashion world and being an entrepreneur in the fashion world in Denver is a rising scene.
Absolutely. It's the most probably hardest challenge anyone could ever strive for.
I believe and you made a way. But before we get to that, we like to unpack the human behind the mission first. So I want to hear about like young Sam. Like I heard you didn't even care about what you wore at some point.
Yeah. Probably from I've always had like this eye for fashion. I look back at like 4 years old and I'm like wearing this fit. I don't know whether I put it together or my mom did, but it's funny because it looks well put together, and so I've always been into fashion in a weird way. I started cutting grasses at like 10 years old just so I could buy clothes and shoes. Yeah.
So you had like an entrepreneurial heart like pretty early.
Yeah.
Was your family like that?
No. Okay. No entrepreneurs, no like goal chasers. I'm the first one in my family of like multiple generations.
Oh, interesting. What do you think like sparked the fire?
So I've been finally been in a place where I can share about this. But what sparked the fire is it's crazy, but it was literally life or death. Like I got to a point in high school where I had to make a decision to like follow my dreams or go down a route I knew equaled death, prison. Another statistic because I had watched my brother go down that route. And so when you have that trauma early on, it's like chasing your dream isn't really like an option. It's like, I have to do this, or, I could have also went the other route, but I knew what that would lead to. So I had no other option. I had no choice. And I wanted to make something of myself.
I'm always so curious on that because I talk to a lot of people and I'm like, is it nurture? Is it nature? Is it our parents? Is it our environment? Is it our friends? But that pivot point, I'm always fascinated. Like, what was it that made you stop and be like, I have two choices versus just continue on the path? Because a lot of people don't even have that awareness, especially as a young person, to be like, okay, like that's it. I have like, do you think it was just something within you that made you pause?
Nah, it was like two scenarios that are very prominent that I remember. I was 16. I was working in a place called Roma's in Thornton, Colorado. If you're from there, you know it. And I was working in Roma's and I was 16. I'll never forget this day. It was like, I think one of the biggest pivotal moments of my life. My mom called me and she, it was weird because back then, we have a cell phone and, it has mostly calling, but you could still text. And my mom decided to call a restaurant to call me. And so I knew at that moment, like something was wrong. And when she got on the phone, she had told me like my brother was dead. And I don't like, it was a very, very hard moment. And I just had to like accept it. And shortly after that, I was sitting in a circle with a bunch of friends and they literally asked this question. And it was like the friends that I worked with and friends that I was getting in trouble with. And they were like, we were all in a circle. They were like, do you guys see yourselves doing this forever? And I'll never forget that day because I remember like thinking to myself, no, like I could never see myself doing this for the rest of my life. Like that's blasphemy. Like that's so wrong. That's such a waste of potential. And so, a mixture of events like that and things like that really steered me to think more. Yeah. And think that there was more, than just getting in trouble and being addicted to drugs and making my parents disappointed, you know, and having them come represent me in court. Like it was a rough childhood from like 12 to 17. I was always in trouble.
Do you think, do you think, it sounds like you always had some sort of like self-worth or pride or something within you? Because I always feel like it's, for myself, but for young people in general, coached for, you know, my whole life in athletics. And I was curious, I was fascinated by what motivated my young people. I'm like, what is it? Because I can tell them to do stuff as a coach or like modeling by behavior, leading by example is a big thing. But like, I think it really is something intrinsically that you either have or you don't. Do you think it was something like your parents instilled in you, or you always just kind of had like, you had this internal self-belief, even if it wavered at times?
I think it like, and it's so funny, people are like, who would you be starstruck over? And it would be Michael Jordan. Like that was my role model as a kid, like my only good role model, you know? And so I played basketball since 3rd grade to, you know, high school years. And my coach really instilled discipline and the mentality of never giving up. Like I did everything to win. So I think that determination is what got me right here and like allowed me to dodge all the bullets.
Yeah, well, I'm a massive advocate of life skills through sports, through athletics. Because I was very clear early on that I wanted to play sports, so I had to do school to do that. So I was kind of learned like strategic partnerships in, like I was never like the best student, but I get pretty good grades because I was good with the teachers and like whatever. And so we did enough to play, but like most of my lessons really came through athletics. And I think that is where a lot of like, you know, the fire stayed, and then you learn how to like manage it as you grow up.
Yeah, it's so important. I want to see more, you know, it's crazy to see lack of it. You know, I see way less of sports involvement in younger kids, but it changed my life, and I would want that for every kid, you know, on this planet.
Yeah. I think it's too, I really appreciate you sharing about your family, because I think that's a hard space. And I always get weary about even sharing on this podcast, because it's like, I don't want to ever tell other people's story. And I think it's important because I too have addiction in my family, and there's a lot you can't control, especially around the people you care about the most. So when like really tough stuff happens, you really only have one choice, and that's to like be like, what can I pull from this that's positive? And I think it takes time to even get to that space.
Absolutely.
But it is impressive though, as a young person, you had that pivot point and that clarity.
Yeah, it was like, I think just massive pain, you know, massive pain. Like I don't know how else to explain like where that came from, like that fire. And actually I'm in a point, because I've been thriving off that pain for, you know, 12 years since I started my brand. And so now I'm in a point where I'm like, okay, to go to the next level, I want to thrive off joy and peace and happiness. I don't want to thrive off chaos and, you know, disruption and chaotic events. And like, it's just not my goal anymore. And fire.
Yeah. You seem like a peaceful spirit, actually. And it's funny because it's like bright, loud colors, but then like level edge soul, if that makes sense. Turmeric and tequila, man, all the days. But it's magic that you can pull that through. Again, have that awareness as a young person, and then find the vision. Have you ever done your core values? Like values or like certain things that are really important to you, like lifestyle wise?
Yeah. Passion. Yeah. Passion, community. You know, from a young age, like I didn't even understand it. I barely am understanding it now, but from a young age, I was like always pulling people up with me. And like, I really care to see other people do what they love, because I know that brings happiness, you know? I'll also never forget like these major moments in my life. Like I worked a receptionist job for like 3 years, and I saved up. I remember like sacrificing everything I could to save up money to quit my job and like that be it, and full-time pursue what I loved. And that made such a difference in my life, and I wanted to see that for everyone else. So I've helped a lot of people do what they love. And I think I don't know how to define that core value, but just helping others do what they love.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's almost like community service. Like, and the good thing about before you can put like language to your values is you're living it, you're walking in it without labeling it, which I think is really cool. Was your family like that? Like, did you get that from your parents or?
Yeah, my mom is like my mom is like an angel on earth. My mom, like, so I have 2 little sisters that were adopted when I was 12. So I got to see, you know, like I was very present and conscious for that. I got to see what that looked like, and saving humans at an early age, you know. I don't know where I get it. I think a lot of self-help and like seeking to be better also.
Yeah. I think seeing that early on, like you can, I don't know, bringing two people into your house is tough. Yeah. But I think there's such a beauty in that. And you get to see, you really do save two lives. Like that's literally pretty incredible.
And from really, really horrible situations.
Yeah.
So it was really cool to see, and then I think that kind of came onto me, and I'm just trying to save everyone,
Yeah. Well, save yourself.
Right.
I've learned that too. But I do believe in a world where everything is measurables and return, ROI, and this and that. All the in between, the non-measurables, where you're straight up just doing good things, being gracious in, the messy pursuit of life, and plans fail and things change. And it's like, man, you can get so tied up in it. And as an artist, as a leader, like stuff falls back on you. We'll talk about the brand here in a second, but at the end of the day, if it's your thing, you're responsible. And so it's so hard to not be like the quote unquote diva or this or get mad. And it's like, but some shit you just can't do anything. And you have two choices. Like you can battle it, or you can be like, all right, what are we going to do?
Yeah. I look at strong, powerful women because that did never come easy or natural for me. Like my mom is a very too sweet, like too nice of a person, and I that definitely rubbed off on me, and I got taken advantage of and walked all over my whole career. And so I've been studying powerful but gracious women, and I love like pulling attributes I love from them.
I think that's good. Well, leading by example. Even seeing like Michael Jordan, that was my number in college. Like I was a big fan. A white girl from the Burbs playing lacrosse. Jordan was proud. We're trying to, graceful disrupt back then. And I came, loud, athletic, and like personality is loud. But in reality, like my leadership is more community, come through. Like I don't need to yell at you and be this coercive leader. I'd rather walk in it with you and be there. And that hasn't always been the leadership style of America, like of the corporate world.
Never has it been.
Yeah.
Never still. I was just thinking how even in 2023, it is uncommon to see, because I was walking by a work establishment yesterday, and I was thinking how even architecturally, they're not designed for the people making the company or running the company. It's meant for, the opposite. And so Google is so ahead of their, time as far as like accommodating their employees and giving them what they need and want and deserve versus like the bare minimum, So I've actually been reading a book called The Art of Power. Or the Power. Yeah. The
I
Art
haven't
of
read
Power.
it, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And so it was never built off of like fairness or, or we wouldn't have billionaires and then people not being able to eat. Like there was always this separation and division. It's weird.
Well, there's nepotism, and if you come from certain things, it's really hard to break out from wherever you came from, like in any capacity, like one spectrum or the other. But the beautiful thing about this day and age is one of the upsides is social media and like questioning a better way, discovering a different way, having exposure on stuff that never would have otherwise gotten any media attention because it didn't fit under certain umbrellas of major media corporations. And there's all this, that's what we like to say, graceful disruption, because like disruptor is so coercive and like this, but like there's a grace to it, but you still need to fuck it up. Like we still gotta mix some things up.
Yes.
But there's a better way. Do you think creativity was like a voice for you before you used your voice?
Absolutely. I was in New Mexico. My mom gave me a or like one of those disposable cameras at like 6 years old, 5 years old. I was visiting my grandpa in New Mexico, and I remember like arranging my Beanie Babies as if they were models and like photographing them. So I've always had self-expression, and like, I'm shy. My style is not, but I'm so shy. So even to wear what I feel like I want to wear has taken me so long to break through,
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I think most people are like that in some capacity. And like literally, we are such juxtapositions in how we are as humans. And the more we get to know ourselves and like the radical self-acceptance, which takes a long time.
It does.
At 42, almost 43, as we discussed before getting on, I'm still learning. I'm still doing like the self-awareness and the check-in and like these breakdown and breakthroughs and like 10 lessons I learned 10 years ago are now coming back through. So it's really hard. And I think it's just a reminder of like not to judge a book by its cover, because people wear so many masks or layers, and it's almost never how it appears.
Right. Yeah. And that's just what it is, right? Masks.
Yeah.
I try to wear zero masks. I try to always be authentic before it even became, trendy and cool.
Yeah.
I'll
yeah.
never, that was funny. I was speaking for Denver Startup Week and they were like, just be your authentic self. And I'm like, what does that even mean? This is like 5 years ago.
Okay.
When it was just new, and a new word being used. But yeah, I think authenticity is important and having the courage to be that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're conditioned pretty hard early on to be a certain way. Yeah. And I think by nature, you want to fit in. Like you want to do what everyone else is doing. So, I mean, in the middle school and high school years are brutal, no matter what. Like it's a dumpster fire, like any way you shake it. And it's hard. I mean, you're young, you don't know a lot, but I think we're just so conditioned to like fit in and not stand out that like we spend like the rest of our lives kind of like taking all those layers off.
Absolutely. It's crazy. It's like, I'm reading the Fifth Agreement right now too, and it's talking about that, like that conditioning, like since we're born, of being told disciplined if it wasn't what, the person wanted from us, which then causes us to not want to mess up or make mistakes, which then causes perfectionism. Yeah. And man, it's like so many layers. Yeah. It's so many layers. I'm undoing and unwiring every day.
Well said. We'll have to recapture that in a little clip. So tell me about like first step, because it's one thing to be yourself. It's a whole other thing to be a business person and be an entrepreneur. I've been one for over 25 years now. And man, it sounds glamorous, I think, to a lot of people, but it's not. It's really hard. It's totally worth it.
Yeah.
But man, pack a helmet because it's a jungle out there. And you're doing fashion in Denver, which we're not really like notoriously known for. So tell me about like first steps. Like what was the light bulb that went off and it's like, I'm going to be a fashion designer. What did you do to just get started?
So you'll probably see a trend. I'm very extreme. I'm in or I'm out.
Identify strongly.
19. So I couldn't get into college. This is used to be embarrassing story. I don't really care anymore. I had such a low GPA. I couldn't get into colleges. I just told my mom, because I'll tell you in a second, but I didn't even tell my mom this. I didn't tell anybody. I threw the letters away. I had applied for like 2 or 3 colleges just to see, and I got denied. And I threw them away. I didn't even tell my mom. And last week I got a call from, I can't say which one, but a really big university to come speak to 700 people.
No way. Oh my God, I love this so much.
And I'm like, I call my mom and I'm like, guess what? Like, and by the way, you didn't even know, but I didn't even get accepted. And she was like, what? And so I had always wanted to make my parents proud. That's what really started me and pushed me outside of not wanting to be like my brother. Wanting to make my mom and dad proud was a very strong desire and determining factor for me. So 19, you have that really hard decision, 18, you have that really hard decision you have to make to do what you want to do for the rest of your life. Like you have to make that decision, which I don't understand why we're supposed to do that at 18. But yeah, that's what American society says. So I was like, well, I can't not do anything. So I'm going to go to community college. I'm going to study art and business and make my parents proud because I was the first one to go to college in my family. Man, 1 quarter in, I can't do this anymore. I was like, I'm paying for a guy to read me a book that I can read myself, and I'm paying him for it when I could be investing that in my business. So I dropped out. Okay. And then I had no choice but to start the next day.
I love it.
I started at a little computer desk I was at, working in Boulder. And so I had no idea how to start. I didn't know anything.
So what'd you do?
I Googled how to start a clothing brand.
That's what's up. Yeah. Okay.
And I started YouTubing, and I learned about LLCs, and I, started my first trademark and hired my first logo designer. And it was just all these check marks, that I learned based off Google and YouTube. And I didn't know if it was correct. I just was doing it, and I failed so many times that I finally learned how to do it the right way.
Yeah.
But starting in Denver was probably the biggest challenge.
I totally believe that. Do you think, though, with that many challenges early on, you think you're ahead of the game a little bit now in environments that it's a little bit easier to maneuver and like secure these relationships or fabrics or manufacturers and stuff? Like, are you kind of glad you went through the ringer early on so it's not as treacherous now?
Yeah. I feel that in so many ways, with fashion, with mental health, with life crises. And I feel that way all around. Yeah. I feel very ahead of my time. And that was also a thing that I've looked at as like a problem, because I would make these pieces here in Colorado. I would try to sell them for years. Nobody would like look at them, buy them, wear them. Go to LA and they'd be like selling and 15 minutes, you know? And it's like,
That's crazy.
So I was always thinking there was something wrong with me or
Yeah.
my designs, and it was
Yeah.
nothing wrong with me. It was
Yeah.
just the city wasn't ready for it,
Yeah.
which was even more challenging.
Yeah. Well, and you want to be where you came from, and it's like all your people and your home, and you know, it's tough. But I think it's also good to like totally go out of your comfort zone and just weather the storm of California.
Oh man.
Like, tell me about that.
That
Like,
was
tell me
it.
about those first few like experiences.
It's so funny because I'm getting to a point where I'm like reflecting a lot about what it took to get here, and me dropping into if you can just imagine this suburb girl who's like very naive, doesn't know really I've never been outside of America. I didn't know anything. I've never seen a roach in my life. Like little things that were very big deal back then.
Yeah.
So I moved to I become a friend's roommate in LA. He was already living there. I'm like, okay, I don't know anything. I don't know where I'm moving to. I'm just like, I'm gonna do it. I had $2,000 to my name, and I was like, I had just gotten my car totaled, and that's what they had given me. And I was like, okay, well, this is a perfect opportunity. I quit my job, and I moved to LA. Moved to the middle of Koreatown, and if you know anything about LA, that is not the place to be, and it was like a third world country.
Okay.
It was like me dropping into a third world country. I didn't know what, like, I was just like, where, like, so lost and confused. And then I also like had to deal with being poor in LA, you know, and like trying to make it and putting myself through fashion styling school and self-funding everything, you know. And it was I made it through hell and back with a smile on.
Do you think though, or being in Koreatown, did a lot of that inspire any of the fashion now? Like, was there just creative influence everywhere?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, not at all.
It was like head down.
Yeah. Like, yeah, it was a rough time.
Yeah.
It was a very rough time. My mom was going through breast cancer. Actually, she was just, my bad. No, that hadn't happened yet. I was just trying to like get my grasp on LA, and then I did. And then my mom got breast cancer. So then I was pulled from LA. Well, I chose to come back to Denver from LA and kind of like take a break to help her. But yeah, when you think you have your grasp on LA, it's like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I've never lived there. I don't know that experience by any means. My dad's families were out there, so we spent time there growing up and whatnot, and then just done work and had clients and stuff out there, but never lived it. You never know until you're submerged in it.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know the full effects, but I know enough probably not to get submerged into it.
Yes.
But I just think, you know, all those experiences add up in
They do.
the scheme of things.
Yep.
And it kind of makes it what it is.
The struggle was real, but it was like needed.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you big on like spirituality or faith or like, tell me about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I grew up Christian, and as I got older, I chose to have a relationship with God, and like I continue to choose that, and it's just become greater and greater the more I get clear on what what a relationship with God looks like in my eyes versus like what the world tells me it should, you know?
I'm just big on larger order, and it's funny as you reflect anybody. I'm a branding person, professional, so it's like my thing is however you package it, as long as you're like believing in something bigger and you're faithful in the greater good and the greater larger order, I think you're gonna be all right. And the more you reflect, I think there's so many blessings that probably look like travesties, but they're not, like not getting into college or not doing this. But thank God you didn't.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And so when you spoke there, did you say I applied here and didn't get in?
It's coming soon.
Hey!
January
okay.
2024.
Okay, yes. And I thank you for sharing that, because I love my young people or any people out there to hear that, because you don't have to do all this stuff you think you have to do and go into debt and do this traditional path and blah, blah, blah. I did all that because I got to play lacrosse. Like I played in school, and like that was my end game. I'm so thankful for my education.
Yeah.
As soon as I got out though, I was like, I'm done with bosses. We're going to do entrepreneurship. And kind of like you, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but we're going to figure it out because I know what I don't want.
Yeah.
And I think when you're clear on that, like you're sitting in class and you're like, this just doesn't make sense. That's enough intel to make a move.
It has to be, because, you know, you only get one life, and you're the only one. It doesn't seem this way, but like you're the only one deciding what's going to happen. You know, most of life happens to us, and then we decide from there what happens to us. But also you can allow outside opinions determine that. But that's not the way.
Well, perfect segue. Tell me about this mental health journey. Like, how are you good about it? This wasn't a conscious conversation for me until later on in my life. Thankfully, through athletics, like you talk about meditation and stuff a little bit for sports, but nothing like it is now.
Yeah, man, I didn't know the word mental health. Like, I didn't know what it meant. I've heard of it. I know it, but I didn't know what it meant. It wasn't until 2020, April 2020, the world had just shut down. I lost all my businesses. I was like not doing in a good financial position. And I was in Hawaii. I was in a toxic relationship, but I was also in Hawaii. I had just gotten there to spend 1 month while I figured out what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And I'll never, like, these moments, like, are so important, like, take such a toll on me. But I was in Hawaii, the place, you know, where we call paradise. And I was just so sad and not okay.
Yeah.
And I had never taken time to, like, feel that.
Yeah.
So when I'm sitting there in Hawaii, I'm like, why do I not feel okay? Like, I should be happy right now. And I realized and understood for the first time in my life what depression was.
Yeah.
And then, this is crazy, I can't make this up, but so that day I was like, okay, well, what do I do about it? Like, I started Googling things. I decided I was going to turn my phone off for that night, and I was going to turn it back on the next day. And like, maybe that would help, you know, unplugging, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Just new to mental health, trying to figure it out. And I did that, right? Next day I wake up, it's, you know, I'm like, okay, I think it's time to turn it back on. Wake up to text, like mini texts and calls that my grandpa had died. So it took my mental health even further back. And so then I'm, you know, come to Colorado, go through the process of, you know, what that entails.
Mm-hmm.
You know, moving everything out of their house, packing up all the stuff, like trying to make burial plans in COVID was very challenging and very long. So I had to get an apartment here. All these different things that led me to sitting in an apartment and like not having any choice but to learn and face what mental health was and go through and like process. I never ever processed any of the trauma I had been through in my life, you know? And so there was so much. I was a very angry person, and it's so funny because, you know, you said I come off as a peaceful person, and I love that because that's my goal. I'm working really hard to become a more peaceful, loving person. That wasn't always me. You know, I was a very hurt, angry kid, and I didn't know how to get that out. Yeah. And so that's what led to, you know, doing a lot of, not drugs. I didn't ever do any drugs. I just drank a lot and tried to escape, you know, in any way possible. You know, whether that was work or healthy ways. But so that was my mental health journey, and that's the start of it. And I feel like I'm forever going to be on a mental health journey from here on out, you know, just continually getting better and unprogramming and undoing, you know, what had been done.
Yeah. But it's an awareness because life does come at you fast and it's constantly going.
Yeah.
I think, you know, talk to a lot of people, obviously, because of this and just in my job in general. And it's always a running theme that we have. I say like my mission-driven varsity humans, wherever my varsity pin is, you know, we're in it. We're going to fix it. We're going to do more. We're going to train harder. We're going to read, Google, YouTube this. And like when it's time, God, universe, Madonna, big Madonna fan, whatever is going to stop you and make you pause. And I think that pause, that stillness is the hardest thing in the world. Because if you've been running, you've been moving and you can control it, and then everything hits you like a tidal wave, like everything becomes real.
Yeah.
And I haven't talked to somebody yet, like especially the super successful, like, you know, high achievers, we're going to avoid it the most. And it's going to hit us the hardest.
After studying so many successful people that I admire, I think that's the commonality.
Yeah.
Is we're all running from something.
Yep.
And it's like, how do we healthily deal with it, you know? So yeah, it's something I'm still working on now that we're like back to full speed. I definitely take the mornings for myself. First hour is like my time. I meditate, I read, I do, you know, as many things that it will positively impact my day and life, you know?
Yeah, I feel that. It's funny how COVID kind of like checked the whole world. I mean, there was so many like tragedy pieces from it and like just disruption on like such a massive scale from our realities. And then on the flip side, like that, like universal pause for everyone was, I mean, more than needed. And some was good, some wasn't good. I mean, it was just clarity for better or worse.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I think, I mean, like it was needed. It was needed. You know, it was hard
Yeah.
for a lot of us, but it was needed.
Yeah.
We needed to face ourselves, you know? We needed to stop running and sit still so we can heal and feel, because that's how we get better.
Yeah.
And my life has dramatically taken like a 360 since doing that. And so I can fully say, like, my friend put it to me this way yesterday. She said, we live in a culture that like only focuses on the exterior vessel.
Yeah.
But if we realize we're just a soul in the vessel, and the soul is the one that needs to get fed, not the vessel, like that doesn't even make sense to feed the outside, but the inside is what's living. You know, it's like, and she was like, that's what's so wrong with this world and generation, you know? And it's like, that's 100% true. We're over here, like, I saw on a billboard the other day and I wanted to take a photo. I was driving though. But it was so wrong. Like, it was so wrong. It was like, do you see frown lines? Call us for some Botox. And I'm like, but let's talk about the frown. Like, why are we talking about the frown lines?
Yeah.
But that's the world we live in.
Yeah. It's so, we're here for Botox. Shout out sponsor.
Okay.
What? No, I'm just kidding. Well, not really. I actually call it. But it's the juxtaposition of being all, it's both sides. You got,
And it's not bad, right?
Well, I mean, it's
just where we
botulism, so it's definitely not good for you. But
Right,
yes, yeah.
It's just where we spend the advertising budget. you know?
100%. Well, you know, are you into philosophy by chance?
Yeah.
Okay, so like, long story short, if you're not, it's basically to live is to suffer. Like, that's what it all is. And reality is nothing more than applied meaning. So the best thing about creatives is like, you can be out there and you're like through your fashion, through your voice, like you're creating reality. You take something that isn't something, model it, wear it, literally, and you know, no pun intended, and put it out there, and it becomes a thing. So on the flip side of that, marketing and branding, all those billboards are creating our reality. And so especially for our young people, they're seeing that and they're thinking that's real. So it's one thing, you know, 42, 43, Botox funny, haha, but like, I'm a conscious adult that can understand the difference and apply
balance. Yes.
my young people, that's all they see.
Right.
There's no before and after.
Kim Kardashian.
Oh man.
That's all they see. That's what they think is normal.
yeah.
You know, another thing that I'm going to talk on very soon on my social medias is, you know, a lot of, I just have such a big heart for girls who think that the only way to get success is to sacrifice themselves or their bodies. And I had to prove it myself that there was ways outside of that to like one lead and then talk about, because it's just not a common route. You know, we see the opposite so often, and I'm like, I just feel so heartbroken for these little girls coming up thinking that they have to, you know, get a butt job by the time they're like 14, you know, 19. And it's like, no, like you can just be a great person and get just as far.
And
you know?
making those big decisions at such a young age, like altering yourself before you are like even grown. I mean, still figuring it out at over 40. If you're 18, man, you got a long way to go to figure out who you are and what you really want. Yeah. And so to make some of those permanent changes early on, like that changes your heart space.
Yes.
Like you said, your soul.
Yeah.
We talk a little bit on here, but one of my quotes I really love is, you know, world peace starts with inner peace.
And we've got to get to this space where we really do like radically accept who we are. And at my gym, I don't have kids, all my like crew does. So I hear about their stories, and like a lot of the kids get bullied at school and some of this stuff. And I'm like, I just wish our young people could fundamentally understand that everything that makes you different, all the weird stuff, like things that make you stand out, it's probably intel on your gifts for this world. So like whatever it is, it might not make sense now. Like it takes time to come together, but like just write it down and know somewhere. That's why I ask every single person, like, tell me about your young self. Because usually the writing's on the wall, but we're conditioned to not embrace those things. And the mental health stuff comes in, and it's like this scary cycle of like, damn, we got to spend all this time and money to get back to right where we were the gifts were showing.
Absolutely. Or thinking that like we have to title it with like these disabilities or handicaps, or, you know, these things that handicap us, like autism. It's like some of the most genius people we know are autism, or, you know, have autism. It's like, I think it's about, well, one, I've always hated labels.
Yeah.
I've always hated labels because it makes us have to judge everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then judgment is what makes us not want to be different, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's this like trickle effect that is running our kids and like you said, the things that make us different are like our superpowers.
Yeah.
We just don't know it, and we're taught that it's problems, or we're different and it's bad, and it's no.
I think though the upside of social media is like body positivity, and some of this becomes a buzzword, especially with major corporations. And our kiddos get it. And if you have like conscious conversation with kids, 10, 11, 12, 13, I had a conversation today with one of the girls I train with. Her son was like saying these remarks. I'm like, oh my God, he's like a grown man and he's 10. Like he's saying these like super aware of situations and comments. And
That's
it's
so awesome.
Yeah. And I think our kids are questioning a better way. Like I truly am. I mean, I'm eternally an optimist most days, but I think our kids get it. And I really believe in like the power of their voice and kids question. I mean, not walking out of class and starting a business. Like I think that happens more and more every single day. Yeah. And while society might not champion that, our young people do. Like other people view that stuff that my generation probably looks at it a certain way. Our young generation doesn't. That's like, I mean, fight the power, do your thing. Like it's just viewed so differently. Yep. So I do think there's a shift out there in things going on. And I love that you, for your brand, Infatu, which I want you to talk about, it's a brand creativity. I mean, fabulous clothes, but you have like, it's like the mission and the passion behind it that is like the soul of the fabrics. Tell us about that.
Yeah, the slogan is passion in every thread, and it truly is. Fashion and doing what I love saved my life, and so just to be able to create these messages and different pieces that can in return like share that with the world is important to me. And then after making I don't know what number I'm at now, but I've made over 450 plus one-of-one jackets.
Oh, okay.
Saving over 450,000 gallons of water.
Hey, okay.
And I've been able to see this commonality that like these pieces just uplift people's spirits and make them feel like so good. And that's probably the most fulfilling part about it for me.
Well, I love it. And here's the thing. So if you look at the big brands, you know that it works. Like people buy it. They want to be a part of something bigger. What's cool right now is we can have intentional humans, and some of these brands are actually getting pretty intentional. They're doing good stuff about diversity, inclusion, and environmental things. And we've got people that are like startups growing their business with intentionality from the get-go. Yep. And then our young people, or any people really, can see the story behind that and intentionally buy from you because of that. Even if they're not super fans of the product, which I know they are, but I'm saying their intentions and supporting the brand are almost more important than the product itself.
Right.
Which is like really powerful.
Yes.
I mean, that's like graceful disruption at its finest, because then you're disrupting the dollar, which then trickles into disrupting DC and like a whole other podcast. But it starts to just really like make that wave.
My mentor said it the other day in a great way. She said, if these people aren't going to give back, then I'm going to adjust my prices to fit the give back in my prices.
100%.
And so, that's something I've kind of been testing out.
I love it.
And, right now, 20% of our proceeds go to our friends in Uganda who are like struggling to just eat every day.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's always been intention and purpose behind everything we do. And that's only going to amplify as I get more funding, because I've funded this business the whole time myself. And it's been that in itself, talk about entrepreneurship, and the ups and downs and the battles. Yeah. Funding is like one of the biggest, while funding yourself. Yeah. But it's been amazing, and I would never change anything. And it's getting in a good place.
Well, it's funny that you say you're shy, because you got to have a thick skin to do that, especially in LA and some of these big cities. And it's like, man, you get walked over, especially as a female. Like, I mean, it's just not, a lot still has not changed. And it's hard to be in that space. And fashion in itself, sometimes when your career, your thing is it's you putting it out there, it's really vulnerable. Did you feel vulnerability being like, here's my creation, like this is your heart space, what saved your life, and then someone's judging it and putting a dollar value to it? Was that hard for you?
Oh my God. Still to this day, the hardest part. Because I create for me. Yeah. I create for me. I had to start creating for others because I had to make a business that was profitable. But yeah, this was always just a self-expression like tool. And then I had to learn how to price it.
Yeah, and that's a piece of it.
That is really, really challenging. Like, what is this worth? Especially some of the pieces I put so much time and energy into. And something I haven't talked about ever is, so when I was 12, I got hit by a drunk driver, and I have really major chronic pain.
Oh, okay.
And so when I'm putting my time and self into these pieces, I'm not just like, it's not just enjoyment putting myself into these pieces. It's like me literally sacrificing because it hurts so bad to make these pieces, to sit at a desk. I can't no longer sew all my pieces because I cannot sit at a desk for more than like an hour to give to create the piece. So I've had to outsource a lot of that. But I'm giving my all in all these pieces. So to be able to like price that was very challenging, and it still is to this day. Yeah. It's gained and it's continued to elevate in price, and through the business, people who have my best interest around me have helped me increase that and kind of show me how to charge accordingly. Yeah. But it was never an easy, natural thing for me.
Well, the irony is that we have the price point psychology. I talk about a lot with some of my clients and clients starting out. And, when you pay a lot for something, you put more value to it. So it doesn't matter if you have two things that are exactly the same. If you get it for free and then you pay a bunch of money for it, you just automatically put more value to the thing you paid a lot for. Like you sacrificed hypothetically more for this thing.
Yep.
So you have to, as a business person, put that on it, because that immediately, just like we're talking about judgment, people put value to that. So if you underprice it, you not only undervalue yourself, you undervalue the way they're going to look at it.
Yeah.
So it could be a Gucci rag or a Calvin Klein rag, and it's the exact same thing. Gucci's going to win all day because people have, there's notoriety to it. There's, a clout to it. There's eliteness. And so it's really interesting thing. And I think that part, and it was a challenge for me too, always starts with us. And if if it's literally like hurting your body and your sacrifice and time and energy,
go ahead and put tax on that.
Put it out there. It has to be sustainable.
Yeah.
What I've been doing for the last 12 years was not sustainable. Yeah. And now it's like at a point where I'm like, okay, this can't happen for another 12 years if I don't learn how to be sustainable.
You have
with
to scale
systems,
it. Yeah. Yeah. It's just that leap is so hard. I've talked about this a little bit, but did the jackets because my long-term goal is actually to build a choir, which is so random, but just love music, feel called to do it. No idea how that's going to work, but I want it to be choir, music, and then fashion, but just super basic stuff that's kind of like black and white, simple, so people can kind of customize it or do whatever they want. This is still just for anyone that's listening, like just start. I literally sourced patches, ironed it on, glued it, like basic of basic. But the point is you just do it with whatever you have.
And then you did that.
You let it, it's coming out there. And it's not that it wasn't hard, but it's still vulnerable being like, here's this thing I created. Like, what do you think? And I don't know. It's tough. And
it's open up for judgment.
Yeah, 100%.
You're literally like giving your heart to someone or to a stranger and being like, what do you think?
Yeah.
That's a good perspective.
It's wild. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, I think you just got to start and go out there and let it be and then just let it grow. I mean, is some of your stuff now pretty different from when you started?
That's a great question. I just had this conversation with a friend. You're not going to start perfect.
Right.
But if there's any future designers out there listening, I'd highly recommend, and this is what I did. I never compromised my quality. Even if I didn't know how to do it, I would find someone who did. Yeah. Because quality was like really, really important to me. For me, it's what I thought separated an amateur from a professional. And so early on in my career, I was like, okay, I have to have precision on my sewing. So let me go find someone who has 25 years of experience. And I would hire them, and pay their prices because it mattered that much to me. So, I think, and I just heard a story from a friend who commissioned this girl to give her, to buy, a jacket, and the quality was so poor. She couldn't wear it. And so, but the price was so high. So it's like, you only get one first impression.
Yeah.
And if you give somebody a jacket and it falls apart in 2 days, that's not a good one. And I just value my customers. I value my quality. I value my name. There's just no. So quality is number one. And I've always found a way not to compromise that.
I like that. I think that's critical. I do think the first impression is so crucial. But I think just starting the process, like maybe not charging it, giving it away,
yeah,
and getting it out there. For me, it was always like an accountability piece. Like even podcasting, if you listen to the first episode, we're on a plane and it's like, we're just going to start and like, let it be raw. But the theme was also kind of like, we got to disrupt what's going out there and shake some of the smoke and mirrors. Yes. So if it looks shitty in spaces, like that's the truth. But once you get to a space where you are charging, you do have customers, I couldn't agree more. Like you've got to come correct immediately, especially if you're not backed by a big brand or a bunch of cash, like you really only have that small window to make a name. But I'd say it's that balance of don't let that hold you back from not getting out there and not just starting in general.
Yes.
Because it's not going to be perfect round one.
Right. And just start.
Yeah.
Don't
just
let
get the
that
process
stop
going.
you.
Yes. Yeah. Do you look at some of your first initial pieces now and be like what's your vibe on it?
There's a few pieces I recently just found in storage that were like, I was still sewn really well, but because of my lack of like construction and knowing like silk doesn't go well with jersey knit or like different things like that, they didn't go, like their turnout wasn't as good. Okay. The sewing was still good. And, I made this first collection with a woman who I had just met through a mutual friend, and she didn't speak English and I didn't speak Spanish. So I always like laugh about this first collection I ever made because it's like a miracle. The fact that it even happened.
Yeah.
From there on, it got better and I found someone that I can work really well with. And so you can see that in my work. I also think that some of my older designs were more innovative because I didn't allow things that I know now block my creativity. Like, for example, like production or price or market.
Yeah.
I think about those things as I design now, but 16-year-old Sam would just go in my bedroom and like design something that came to my imagination, whether I knew how to make it or not.
Yeah.
And some of those designs were my favorite.
I love that. Well, you're unintimidated. Like there's no filters there. Like you just,
and that's the best. I want to get back to that.
Hell yeah. I did my core values a long time ago. I actually got to redo them, and I'm not like a big personality tester type,
but like values I think are good. And if you can do any free test out there, just like any indicator. But it was like honesty, independence, and creativity. And the first two were obvious, like because I care about transparency is really big for me, like in anything. Hence, we had to disrupt smoke and mirrors. And independent, super independent human. But creativity was like something like I didn't know that mattered to me as much as it did. And I think the more I got in line with my mental health and like calming and not being so busy, and like the more the creativity flows. And I still struggle with this. Do you think the more you became spiritually aligned or mental health dialed in, do you feel like that opened up the passageways for the creativity to flow?
My flow comes best when I have time.
Okay.
So when I have time, money, and nothing on my calendar.
Yeah.
That's
money always helps.
Because then I don't the entrepreneurial life, you're always having to like worry about, that gig I have next week so what I would do is I would block off like 2 weeks and just create and like not put anything on my calendar. I'm able to get in this flow of like imagination and focus where I can just pour out. But then, it's really hard for me to go from like bookkeeping or not bookkeeping, but like admin work to creativity. My brain doesn't switch that quickly anymore.
Yeah.
I like to just take my time and like get in the flow.
That makes total sense. I mean, you look at any like the big albums or music artists, like it is kind of like this lockdown where you've got to like seal off the world and then just stay in it.
Yes.
I've never done 2 weeks. I actually might try that, like, budget and time and schedule willing.
Right.
But definitely like 8 hours at a time to just like be in a flow, like drawing or writing or thinking or like.
Or even 7 days.
Okay.
Or I think 5 to 7 is really
We're
good. Well, like whatever is possible, but 5 to 7 I think is a really good number because like, man, I took my first vacation in 3 years.
Okay.
I went for 7 days. The first 2 days, my friend was like, you're on vacation. Why are you still like following a schedule? And it wasn't until like the third day that I had like a regulated nervous system. And then the next few days I could like think straight and like unwind. But it's like, we have so much expected from us on the day to day to like unwind in one day, or be in that flow state in one day. So I allow like 2 days to get out of the like nonstopness and like go, regulated nervous system, then create.
I think that's such like wise intel because no matter how aware and spiritually and faithful that you get, like if you get in certain environments, you can't not be like that. And that's working with influencers. I see it all the time. And I'm like, doesn't matter how conscious or where you think you are, if you're around it, you're going to become it. Yes. And it's that constant. And if you're in it, this is your job. You're in Hollywood and New York and these energy things, which I love. And then I got to retreat and then just like pet dogs and be away. And
put food in grass.
Yeah. Sip tequila in grass. Do the things. But it's that constant awareness. you talked a little before we jumped on the mic about being in LA and that scene and having a little bit of experience with it, you know, being some of the commercial lots in the studios. And how do you balance all that? Because you got to be in it to be like exposure. Like it's this, you know, devil and angel you got to be in the mix of.
I'm still trying to figure that out. I've had to remove myself for the last year from it because, you know, kind of like we were talking about, it's like you become that.
Yeah.
And there was many times where I had to check myself, like, you're becoming an LA person, you know, but it was out of survival. It was out of LA, man. LA is a rough place. And I don't think a lot of people realize what you have to go through to live in LA today. It's like surviving a third world country, specifically downtown LA. And that's where I would spend most of my time and live because it's close to the fashion district. But I have to like step over, you know, human feces and like hope that like this homeless person isn't chasing me into the fabric store. That's how serious it is. And, you know, I lived in downtown LA a year ago, and I had to escape it. Like it was literally a very conscious decision to escape it because I couldn't imagine who I would become if I stayed there. Mm-hmm. So desensitized, so on guard, so, you know, cold because I had to be firm, and I had to like, you know, watch over my back 24/7. I would walk my dog around the block and I would be yelled at or threatened, or, you know, it's just not a good feeling, not a good place to have peace. And so I really, really, really needed peace. And I was like, I'm going to move where, I don't know where that is, but I actually went through a weird scenario where I had like black mold in both houses I lived in.
Oh.
So like January, I had to move out for renovations for black mold.
Okay.
Come back from tour. I lived in a hotel for 3 months, went on tour for another 3 months, come back, and I'm like, I just need a home.
Yeah.
I move into a luxury apartment in downtown LA, and 2 weeks in, I'm sick. My dog's almost dying, like black mold again. Wow. And so it was like this disruption that needed to happen to get me out of there.
So the universe is pointing you in a direction.
Yeah. It needed to happen. And it was really good because taking a step back from it has helped me realize like, I don't have to choose it. This whole time I've had to go to LA. I had to live there because that was the closest place for me to excel in my career and make livable wages, you know, get booked on Netflix or, you know, these high-end brands or people, red carpets. None of that exists here. And so it was always, I had to live there. And I put in 8 years there, and I really wanted to choose.
Yeah. Do you think that you can do things now not living there? Like, do you have fear of that, like not being in it?
You know what's been the most incredible thing is like, this is how God works. Look, January 2022 is when I had to get out of my apartment or my current home for the first black mold round. Well, that time I was booked by the Pharcyde. I didn't know who they were. You know, I had heard of them, but
really?
I didn't know who they were. I never had a
but
client, you know, from them. And they were referred to me by someone here in Denver.
Hey, okay.
And so they were like, hey, we're about to go back on tour. Like, we need a tour flyer. They didn't. Their manager did. We need a tour flyer. I was like, okay, cool. Bring these looks, style them on the beach. Cool guys, you know, great time. Killed the shoot. They were very happy. And then maybe a month later, they call me. And I'm in a hotel, living in a hotel at this point.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, or, you know, the manager's like, hey, will you go on tour? Do you want to go on tour? I'm like, nah, that's not what I do. You know, because I had never sold merch.
Okay.
I'm not a merch seller. Like, that's not what I do. Even for my own brand, like I would struggle selling my own clothing setup because I just very uncomfortable. I'm shy, all those things. So I was like, nah, it's not for me. And then I was like, but if you guys could do this number, like I can make it happen. And then they came back and they were like, all right, we'll do it. So that was my first tour with them. And it changed everything for me. I've been now 2 years in working with them, touring. I leave tomorrow for another tour date.
Oh my gosh.
We go to Europe in another week after that. But so what I've learned is working with the right people will take you further than you could ever go with the wrong people. And LA is a weird place. It's a great place, but it's like this hustle and bustle for like meeting the right people. Everybody's like, it's so fake and it's horrible. It's like everybody's like trying to be cool and like find the richest person and talk to the person with the most followers and like vet you before they even ask your name, or, you know, it's like I hated it. I hated it. That's not who I am. And it was very hard for me to be around that. So I chose and promised myself I would never just work for anyone. After working for a specific celebrity I won't even name, who treated me very badly, and just, that's just how the industry is. You know, you're like a servant to them. Yeah. And I didn't like that. So I was like, I'm going to choose who I work with going forward. And I chose the Pharcyde, and they've been a great client.
That's what's up. Yeah. That's so awesome. And even like the power like this, like you might be a Pharcyde fan, whatever. People be like, oh my God, because I heard they're so cool, I'm gonna go check it out, which they are dope.
They are so dope.
That's so cool. And like that's, I think the pivot point for society in general is like the truth's coming out. Like things are happening. You can't be an asshole any longer and get away with it.
Thank
and then
God.
Be revered by the public. I mean, you still kind of can for a lot of them, but I mean, not really. Like, people can dig.
People are talking. People are posting.
Yes.
I mean, more now than ever, we're seeing, and this is what I was facing, like, but I couldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
Is like all these sexual assaults. I thank God I dodged all the bullets, but I've been in so many positions where it was very close, and I got manipulated, and I got like put in these horrible situations with my passion used against me, simply because a man cannot just handle his position and power the way he was supposed to,
Yeah.
And so, I got really drained from the industry and working in Hollywood, because it just doesn't align with anything that I do.
Yeah. Well, you can only go so far into like the values, and like if you can't fully like qualify or quantify it, like you just know it doesn't feel right, that will grow and grow and grow, and that will physically like manifest in like your liver or your voice, or all these other things. You're just not going to feel well being in that, which those kinds of, I mean, that toxicity and its status quo, like it's acceptable for those things to be like that.
Yeah.
It's really dark, and you get desensitized. You got to keep your feet on the ground to get out.
Absolutely. And have discernment, and lead with your heart, not with money or these other intentions and things that people desire.
Yeah.
I've seen people do anything for money or anything for fame, and I never wanted to be a part of that. I didn't start this journey to be either or of those. So that helped a lot stay on track.
Yeah.
Because I think if I had the intention of like wanting to be famous or rich, I would probably be in a different place.
Yeah.
Because you really have to be guided with values and morals and real goals, not just I want to be famous,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just have to be mindful of your power nowadays, and not to fear it, because the best thing, like really, the term influencer has gotten so negative, but like inspirers is better than like influencer.
I love that.
But yeah, and if you're intentional about that, and maybe you don't want to be in the limelight and do all this, and if you are good about it, you're good with your power, you're personally responsible, you lead with core values, get in front of it. That's what our world needs to see. So I do think it's that pivot point of like understanding and keeping good people around you, but man, step into the light, use your voice, take that stage, like be in it, and tell the college that you didn't get in that now look who's laughing,
right?
And like say the most, because like now's the time.
Yes.
So if you can be grounded, be in it.
And those people, I think, never have the intention of doing things for fame. I think they have the intention of doing things for impact.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference. And you can really tell and feel when people have good intentions.
Yeah.
So I think, absolutely. And what a great time to be alive.
Yeah. Oh, man. See, and I like that you can be transparent, because some people still tiptoe around like the LA conversation and be like, it's glamorous, because there's fear of like, I'm going to get cut off. Tom Cruise's 10th assistant isn't going to like me and blah. Like,
I'm tired of feeling fearful.
Yeah.
And feeling like I have to do this or I have to do that or I can't say this. I've felt that my whole career. I'm just trying to be me. And like, I don't care who doesn't resonate or feel that,
Amen. And that's the only way to go. I mean, back to your like 6-year-old self or whatever it was, like just doing the imagination version of, creating your reality through fashion. That's kind of it.
It is.
That's like the happy space.
Yeah. I see a future for myself that like doesn't run off time. Like I was on a phone with one of the members of Pharcyde, and they were like, I'm like, what day is it? Like,
that's awesome.
I don't run off like the standard things that we run off of in America. And I don't want to. Like I see a life like living on an island, like just so far detached from this society and the way things are supposed to be.
Yeah.
And just living a life that I want to.
I love it. Do you know the irony is going to be like, you're going to be doing that, and yet your brand is going to be like mainland inspiring and shaping, and I think it's going to be a perfect like 1-2 punch of like total opposites, you know? Like that's awesome.
Yes. And I will have deserved that, you know, by
Hell
that point. You know, I took a 1-week vacation after like, I don't know, like 7 years of nonstop work. And so like the next one is going to be like a month, and then it's just only going to grow, you know?
I love it.
Because downtime is important.
Hell, it is. And on that note, what do you see next? You got Infatu, you're public speaking, I see you're, you know, doing creative directing, like more on the business side. What's next? Like, what do you really want?
That's been the question of like my last 2 months to myself, you know, taking time to sit on a beach and really literally ask myself that question and choose not what I have to say or what I have to do, but what do I want to do? Yeah. And, you know, philanthropy work and speaking in schools and being a motivational speaker, whatever you want to title, just speaking and inspiring and sharing this light is very important to me.
So influencer.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, yeah, I'm like, call it whatever. I'm like, I hate that word too, but like, call it whatever. Definitely like making my clothing brand will be all over the world. I have a lot of plans for that, but as I know this far in life, like nothing goes as I plan. Yeah. And so I'll plan as much as I can and then surrender to the rest. But I have a lot of big plans for my brand, still to continue and be worldwide. I'm getting ready to go to Berlin in a couple weeks, and that was the first place I had ever had someone order my brand from.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah. So full circle.
Yeah, so full circle, and it's cool, and I only want to see that increase. I want to style the people I want to on global stages all around the world, and I want to be able to like do whatever I want whenever I want.
Hell yeah.
And not be held down by anything.
Yeah. And in that can be profitable and building mental health, building community, like being your most purposeful version of yourself. Yes. All of it's possible. Yes. I love it. That's amazing. Where do we find you? Where's the brand? Is it in Denver stores by chance?
So because of the pandemic, I pulled all my stuff out of stores like in 2020, getting ready to put some stuff back in stores. I don't know where. I'm looking. So anybody that have great stores here in Denver, hit me up. I'm being particular because, you know, as my brand is, it's very particular. Yeah. And so it can't really just fit anywhere. But we have these really amazing Denver inspired pieces from the Denver Nuggets winning last year. And so I'm excited to put those in the stores somewhere.
I feel like those would be flying off the shelf. Like,
yeah. I think people need to, you know, my brand's always been very hard to sell online. Yeah. It's a more in-person, personal piece because people want to put it on, feel it, especially the investment. You know, they want to make sure it fits and all the different things. So I think once I put it in stores, I'm not going to have any left. Right. That's typically what happens. And then you can also find me at Lil Fresh Sam on all platforms, littlefreshsam.com. And find me out in the streets. I'm getting ready to go back and speak more.
Let's go.
I'm excited to be connecting with people again.
I love it. Check out her. I'm glad we got to talk a lot about you, the human behind the brand. Not that you're here to sell that, but I honestly think that will be your best sales point because I think people will love the apparel, but I think they'll appreciate you as the human and they'll want to rock the brand because of that almost more than the apparel. And that's not just to discredit the talent at
absolutely.
all. It's just to credit the human that much more. And I think that's what we need in our world.
Thank you.
Nowadays. Yeah, 100%. Last question. Okay. What is success to you?
Happiness.
What is
freedom?
Happiness to you? Okay.
Happiness, that's a great question. What is happiness? No, you know, I feel a lot of weight on my shoulders. I feel a lot of pressure. I feel a lot of fear. I feel a lot of things that don't feel good. And I would imagine that happiness doesn't feel any of those things ever. Okay. And then I would imagine that freedom also doesn't feel any of those things. It doesn't feel weighed down by anything. Time, like money, people, anything. There's nothing that could weigh freedom down. And so that's what I would imagine success is like. You know, being able to wake up and like decide what you want to do that day. You could go to Bahamas or, you know, and take your family with, like, I want to have no bounds, like not be bound by anything.
I love it. I feel like it's a true creative at heart.
Yeah, I am a true creator at heart. The more I listen to like true creators like Basquiat, who were painting trash. That's me.
I love it. Well, dude, ironically, you're like such a student of the game, and the game being life. Like, you're reading the books, you're doing the things. Like, school, all the school, college wasn't ready for you. Like, that was a stepping stone.
Yes, I care. I want to be my greatest self.
Oh yeah.
Come from being the opposite. So I'm like, what can I achieve? Like, who can I be? Just it literally gets me out of bed in the morning every day.
I love it. Well, the embrace, I love that you say that, because like the more we embrace the adversity, the more it makes us relatable to people, and that we can lean in and then relate back to them. And so like all the hard stuff is really a big piece of the puzzle.
Oh, it's so important. Yeah. Think about how many people we can help through what we've gotten through. Yeah. That's why we went through it.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you taking time to come on the show, to lean in and get personal. Straight up, she's flying on a flight tonight. Well, tomorrow morning, technically. This human's on the move as she's talking about peace and freedom. It's coming. But I sincerely appreciate you and you leaning in. And I think this is what our world needs. So our audience is humble but growing, and we have some good movers and shakers. But I have faith we've got the right people listening. So I'm so glad that your voice is on here.
Keep doing what you're doing. This is needed.
We try.
Literally the reason I'm here right now, I'm going to get less sleep because of it. But I care about mental health so much. And anytime somebody reaches out to me with that intention, or that's one of their values, like it's a non-negotiable. I'm there.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
Yeah.
I mean, I slide in the DMs, I tell people, and like, you never know it's going to come back. Truly gracious. So, I mean, and people know I tell the truth. So, I really appreciate that. And I love that is at the forefront of the brand and the mission.
Yeah.
It's going to be everything.
Yep. It's a challenge this year. Do as many speaking engagements and podcasts or any interviews, whatever.
Get out there.
As possible.
I love it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I so appreciate it. Maybe like down the road, we'll have you in and we'll have you bring a bunch of apparel, because we're leaning so much into video, and we'll have it shown.
Yeah.
Because I think it's so cool for people to see the creativity and the intricacies of the fabrics and everything else. So it's really cool.
The most important part.
All right. Go check her out. I appreciate you. Good luck on the tour. And be sure to watch this video and go see her stuff online.
Yay.
Thanks, Lil Fresh Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining Turmeric and Tequila with your host, Kristen Olson. Tune in next time, and don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.